The Riddles of Barabbas, Chapter 11, The Sign of Jonah. Barabbas traveled south to Bethany in Judea, then north to Ephraim. The parable of Lazarus, as told in Luke 16, has a moral to the story that should not be hard to glean. If a man is raised from death and sent as messenger, a rich man in his wealth would not to righteousness be spurred. In the story told by John, there really is no moral, except to show Barabbas has some ties to paranormal. In the town of Bethany, outside Jerusalem, lived Martha, Mary, Lazarus, where Jesus was welcome. Mary, Jesus christened her, and Martha said, "Come quick, our brother Lazarus, the one you love, is in bed sick." Jesus got the message on the east side of the Jordan, and told his men this sickness wouldn't end in death, he's certain. Disciples thought what Jesus said was not another riddle, did not suspect that Jesus meant death could still be the middle. But rather all this sickness was to glorify God's Son. He spoke in the third person like there was only one. If we assent these words are true with reason a priori, and God said let be born the light, the land and every story, the riddle of who is the Son can be concluded thus: God's only Son's the fullness of the universe and us. Why, when Jesus heard the news, the one he loved was sick, did he wait for 2 whole days before he planned the trip? And how did Jesus know the one he loved was surely dead, when after 2 whole days of waiting, "Let us go," he said? And why did Jesus say that I am glad I was not there? Was this a trick that couldn't take some scrutiny or glare? Jesus' men were worried they'd be stoned along the way. Said Jesus, "We'll not stumble if we travel during the day. If we use the world's light and the world's laws we obey, no one will try to stone us, into trouble we won't stray. It is when one has no light that causes him to stumble, but on our way to Bethany's a hop, skip, and a tumble." Now Thomas, called the twin, of whom John never elucidates, says we will go, and with him we will die for glory's sake. From evening he had died, through afternoon of Jay's arrival, the brother was entombed 3 days, 3 nights, then his revival. Is this the sign, the Son of Man entombed as Jesus promised, for a wicked and adulterous generation quite astonished? Many Jews had walked 2 miles to share the morning spirit. With Lazarus' 2 sisters, Martha, Mary, did they visit. When Jesus got to Bethany, a ways from Mary's home, Martha came to greet him and to speak to him alone. She said to him, "If you'd been here, your role would have prevented the death of Lazarus that's got us all so discontented. But now I know what we might ask of God that he will give. In the resurrection, on the last day, he will live." Said Jesus, "If you truly think that I'm the resurrection, then you will see, though you may die, that Lazarus still lives. And everyone believing and proclaiming through the age, never not shall die, a double negative, for wage." Though the Greek rendition has this nuanced irony, Martha's faith in Christ is what's prevailed as dynasty. Based on certain details John presents, we can presume that Jesus, once in Bethany, stayed somewhere near the tomb, while 1 or 2 disciples were to Lazarus' household sent. We aren't told anything about where all the others went. But based on how guests followed where they thought Mary was going, Jesus and his men could prep without anyone knowing. Mary says near word for word what Martha had just said about the place of Kyrie and if her brother's dead. Kyrie, if you'd been here, not brother would have died. The placement of the not leaves room for 2 effects implied. Kyrie, if you'd not been here, my brother'd have died. Or Kyrie, if you'd been here, my brother wouldn't die. If you want to make confusion in your reasoning less frequent, don't put not between a consequent and antecedent. If Jabar both had been there, and he had died anyway, there'd be no chance of thinking Barabbas was Kyrie. When the crowd with Mary came, they wept and cried with her. And Jesus asked them to what tomb the body'd been interred. They took him to the tomb where Lazarus' dead body slept. The Jews thought love showed through his tears when seeing Jesus wept. And some saw Jesus wept so much he can't open his eyes, and said this man should make it so your brother never died. So Jabar shut his eyes in stern indignant concentration, and asks the other men remove the stone from the foundation. But Martha warns 4 days entombed cause smells that are quite dreary. But Jesus says, if you believe, the smell will be God's glory. Jesus then looked up and said, I thank you that you heard me. I know you always do, but this is so they think you sent me. So having cast some doubt on whether he'd come from above, Lazarus, come out, he yelled, into the tomb thereof. The dead man came out from the tomb, unspecified condition. The reader isn't told if he is with his own volition. Said Jesus, take the linens, let him go amidst the rocks. We aren't told if when let go, the body stands or drops. What sort of trick they saw that day, some witnessed, were impressed. What lesson we should draw from it, though we can only guess. But some went to the Pharisees to tell them of the stunt, and called Sanhedrin's meeting for addressing the affront. They asked what can we do, his list of signs is always growing, and many Jews are leaving us, and with his lot are throwing. They care not for the law, but with his worship they're afflicted, his teaching not distinguished from adulterous and wicked. Like men of Nineveh, we Sanhedrin stand up against this. The sign, like that of Jonah, for 3 days this body's been missed. And if the queen of Sheba came and asked her many questions, could Jabar in his poverty prove wise in her impression? Solomon had given Sheba his estate a tour, and she donated to his cause colossal wealth for sure. We're sure without the faith of those who love Solomon's temple, will lack sufficient funds to pay for upkeep and the rental. Caiaphas, though, he had a plan to use this clever showman for a universal day of martyrdom atonement. For he already had proclaimed that Jesus had to die, to join God's scattered children all throughout the world allied. From that day they plotted, looking for the volunteers to be the human lambs of God for butchery or shear. Barabbas heard the news he needed to escape detection, since word was getting out that he incited insurrection. He withdrew to the wilderness, the village Ephraim, and even when Passover came, he kept himself unseen. By contrast, note that Bethlehem came west through Jericho, and taught in public several days without a worry shown.